The Chicago Bears are officially back at Halas Hall. We're talking about what that means for a team that is not settled and did not just run everything back. Yeah, they won the division. Yeah, they did and won some games. But the real questions on this roster start getting answered in the draft. And with the draft right around the corner, we're talking about not only a player that the Bears have been urged to stay away from, but also the Bears' biggest questions heading into the draft. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Tara Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. Y'all, the Chicago Bears are back at Halas Hall. They are back at Halas Hall, and this is a really good thing for that. You know, April 20th marks the first day of meetings for head coaches, so Ben Johnson and his coaching staff are going to be there, and so that's a really good thing. The Bears also have a new addition with the new, offensive coordinator that they have in here as well, and that's going to be a solid thing. And that even though Ben Johnson is the one that is calling the offensive plays, you want your staff to be all on the same side, or all on the same kind of mindset, right? And that's one of the things that the Bears did have that benefited them last season that we haven't had in prior years under different coaches is the coaching staff that from top to bottom all seems like they share the same message, they share the same mentality, and they hold the players to the same standard, right? Of course, it's been a busy offseason for the Chicago Bears. Drew Dahlman, retired. He's gone. DJ Moore, traded. He's gone. Got a second-round pick for him. Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker, starters at safety. They're gone. Tremaine Edmonds, gone. He was released. He's out of here, right? And so the Bears, on top of that, losing C.J. Garner, Nick Richards, so players that actually have helped the Chicago Bears team last season, they're gone, right? Nashawn Wright, out of here, right? I said Nick Richards, that's a basketball player. Nashawn Wright, out of here, right? And so even though the Bears won 11-6 last year, and it was an impressive season with the way that they won, right? And not the most clean and not the most easily repeatable with some of the fourth quarter comebacks that they had, but it was the Bears won the NFC North. They got a playoff victory out of that. And now we're trying to take it to the next step further, right? And for what it's worth, Ben Johnson said this in regards to everybody being back. It's been a long offseason in terms of you go downtown or you go somewhere and everyone's patting you on the back and telling you what a great job you did. You don't want to hear it. You don't want to hear it anymore. All right, it was great for the first week, but now our sights are turned. And we got a monumental task at hand because this division only got better so far this offseason, and we still have the draft to come. So that's a coach right there that has the mindset that we've seen and heard from Ben Johnson. He's not happy with it. They're not settling. Again, a direct quote from Ben Johnson. We're not building off of what we did last year. None of that's returning. We got to start from the ground up. We have to do something new. We have to do something more sustainable. And that's what the Bears are really hoping for, right? Ben Johnson continued by saying this. So our guys, we got to go back to work just like we did a year ago. It doesn't get any easier. It's going to continue to get harder. They're going to feel that pressure from the coaching staff so that when they get to the games in the fall, they're going to be ready for it. And that's what this is about. This is all about gearing up and getting this football team ready to play football. That's what this whole thing is built on. So this summer, now going through training camp, going through preseason, it's all about getting this team ready for what they need to do and what they need to accomplish once the season starts back. That's all what this is about. And so the Bears are going to use this now. Coaches being back at Halas Hall, they're going to start drawing up things. They're going to start preparing. They're going to start thinking about what's the things and how do they want to challenge these players to take it to the next step this upcoming year, because that is what it's about. The next step for the Bears is one of the most difficult steps for a lot of places, a lot of teams to make. From going from a team that, I use this phrase, but it may not be the best, that snuck up on teams, to now being a team that teams are going to look at and say, listen, this Bears team ain't coming in our house and doing what they did last year. They're not going to have a fourth quarter comeback and get us. Sure, they beat us, but we almost had them or whatever it is. The Bears, again, the thing that I would love to see the Bears do is have more functionality, right? Meaning that it's more consistency. Just the way that they win is more easily repeatable. And that's not to say that what Caleb Williams and this offense were able to do in the fourth quarters of games, it was great. It was phenomenal. And I love that we have that we can default on. But that's not the way that I want us to lose games. Same thing with the defense. We lived and breathed off the takeaways last year. I want us to have a more functional defense that does more things that consistently lead to winning than takeaways. I want us to have a defense that gets after the quarterback consistently, that stops the run game a little bit better, that coverage is better, right? Like if you add that to your ability to get takeaways, then you're talking about potentially one of the best defenses in the league if you can do those things. And so, yeah, we still got big question marks as far as the roster, and that's going to be answered in a couple of days here in the NFL draft, and I can't wait to see what talent that we get in here for that. But it all starts now. The Bears coaches are back at Halas Hall, and this is where the groundwork for another successful season starts being built on. That's what we need to do. So the coaches all getting together, getting on the same page, deciding what they want to do, and then executing that. Once mini camps, rookie mini camps, training camps, all those things start, the Bears are going to be ready and prepared for it. You know why I believe they're going to be ready and prepared for it? Because they have a guy in Ben Johnson that's leading this thing. And that's a guy that has the passion for the game of football. And when your head coach has that level of passion, that level of fire, it's hard for that not to reverberate through your roster and then through the fan base and everything. We talked about how the media covers the Chicago Bears. I'm of the mindset, fuck the national media, right? Just fuck the national media. We're not worried about their takes. We're not worried about how high, how low they are on the Bears. We're not doing that this year. Everything that the Chicago Bears are going to live, breathe, and die by is going to be on that football field. That is where it all matters. So what they do on the football field, let that be what sends the message for the Chicago Bears. All the other narratives, all the other bullshit, all the other stuff that comes from externally, all that, we don't care about none of that this season. We care about what the Bears show on the football field. And I tell you what, I believe we're going to have a team that's going to lay it all out there because we have a coach, a head coach, and a coaching staff that all are very fiery, all are very determined, all are very, consistent in the message that they bring to these players. So let's go out here. I get it. The excitement keeps building and building and building, and let's see what happens with this Bears team. With that said, I want to move on, right? We talked about the next step for the Bears, even in that Ben Johnson quote, was the draft, right? And with so many positions left to need a starter, safety, edge, another defensive tackle, maybe even linebacker. I want to talk about what are some of the biggest questions facing the Chicago Bears heading into this draft. And we're going to focus on the defense today. Tomorrow we'll do the offense, right? Which I think there are not as many questions there, but there are still questions that can be answered in the draft. We'll see that, right? But the Bears, we talked about in the last segment, how they led the league in takeaways, right? And that's great, right? We lost three of our most productive players last season. In Tremaine Edmonds, gone. Kevin Byard, gone. Deshaun Wright, gone. Jaquan Brisker, gone. Those guys are gone. They're not coming back, right? And so now the Bears are trying to build something that they've labeled they want to play faster, they want to be stronger, they want to be more consistent, they want to play with violence, right? They want to do those type of things. So what are the questions heading for the Chicago Bears into the draft defensively? The first one is, where are you going to draft your safety? Will safety be the first position taken for the Chicago Bears? I have no doubts that defense is going to be, probably the first 3 picks taken. We'll see what happens in regards to that because, again, Ryan Poles always does something we don't expect, right? But with the Bears' 25th overall pick, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Dylan Thieneman, one of these guys are projected to be there on the board at number 25 unless the draft board takes another hit. Shout out to the Dexter Lawrence trade, which, he didn't come here, thank God. But the Giants now have an additional pick. But with that said, is that when you look at it, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, Dylan Thieneman, Caleb Downs is another guy that could be on the board, but he's probably going to be well gone before the Chicago Bears select. So with only 3 safeties on the roster for the Chicago Bears right now, how do we feel that? And it's a starting position that we need. We're not going to listen. Shout out to my boy Darius from Dallas. We're not going to listen to Darius and try to move people around and get them in different positions. We want to draft somebody who's going to play that position, thrive in that position while not making another position weaker, right? And so the question becomes how much of a priority is safety really for the Chicago Bears in this draft? Do they draft it first? Is the first position taken? Do they go defensive line? It's going to be really determinant upon how the draft board falls. I think it's going to be addressed one way or another, but with you being able to find really good defensive linemen in rounds 2 and 3, and the safety prospects not necessarily being as clear-cut starters that also fit in Dennis Allen's system, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren has already been called the perfect fit for the Chicago Bears by draft experts based off how he plays in the system or how he could play in Dennis Allen's system and the fit there. So the question is do they look at that very early on? Is that a pick that's taken in the first round? And if it is, how are Bears fans going to react to that, right? I want to be clear. My reaction, your reaction, in the grand scheme of things, our reaction on draft night really doesn't matter if those guys end up being the right guys, right? So the more important thing is getting the pick right. Fan reaction is fan reaction because fan reaction is going to turn at the drop of a dime once people have pads on and we see that motherfuckers is out there killing motherfuckers, right? So, even if you do get a little bit of trepidation or some loud, boisterous, discontent with the Bears taking a safety and not going defensive end in the first round, that could be it. So safety. Is safety addressed first by this Bears team? And if it is it Thieneman? Is it Neil Warren? Is it Caleb Downs? Those are the three guys that I look at. One of those guys in Downs, I think, is going to be off the board well before the Chicago Bears pick. But how and where do you make that selection? That's one of the biggest question marks here for the Chicago Bears. Next up is how early will you address defensive tackle? We have no doubt that edge and tackle both need to be on the line with this one, right? Part of the reason why the Dexter Lawrence trade made the rounds that it did is that this is not a draft that's really high in high level defensive tackles. Like defensive tackles, you look at and you're like, boom, that guy comes in and immediately changes your defense. But there are a lot of really, really damn good defensive tackles in this draft, right? Caden McDonald is a guy that we've talked about. Peter Woods, Caleb Banks, Christian Miller. Like these are all guys that we've talked about. And I think what it comes down to it also is that, you have Javon Dexter, you have Grady Jarrett. Both those guys are returning to coming back to this team, but there's a lot to be desired there. Grady Jarrett did not have a great first season with the Chicago Bears. Can he have a better second year? Yeah, it's definitely possible, but not a great first year. And even with that, he's a veteran. You need to start finding that. Javon Dexter. We have questions on Javon Dexter and his next contract with the Chicago Bears. We know one of his biggest things is he's not great in the run game. So you need to find something with that, right? So when you look at it, Zach Pickens no longer with the team. He's up out of there, right? Dexter Lawrence, that trade didn't happen even though it's not there. So when you look at the names that are projected to be first or second round picks that we talked about at that defensive tackle spot, Caden McDaniel is one of my favorite. Not going to lie to you with that one. But with the Bears not making any moves in free agency to really address the starting defense side, we got some depth tackles in there, which is really good, right? I'm not mad at Neville Gallimore or Contavious Street. I'm not mad at those signings at all, but you have an opportunity in this draft to get somebody who is a good long-term pairing with Javon Dexter, if you decide to keep Javon Dexter long-term, and it are some pretty damn good tackles in this one. So, how early will you address that defensive tackle? That is a huge question heading into this draft, and one that I think it's not going to take past round 2 to find out, right? I think even if the Bears do go safety in round 1, which still is an if, I think both round 2 picks are probably going to be defensive line at that case, right? So, that's what you're looking at if you're the Chicago Bears, and we'll see what they're going to do there. Unfortunately, Bears didn't get compensatory picks. It would have been great to see an additional third-round pick in this draft, but, it is what it is. Now Ryan Poles has to make the most out of what he has available to himself, and then also, be aggressive. And how aggressive is he going to be? That's a question for another day. Next is edge rusher, right? Where do you draft your edge rusher in this one? There's no doubt that the Chicago Bears had one of the worst pass rushes and least consistent pass rushes in the game of football last year. Shout out to Montez Sweat, who did have 10 sacks. We had Javon Dexter, who I believe had 7 off the top of my head. But we need a playmaker at that edge position. Now, Austin Booker looks primed for a breakout season, right? And I think how early, if we see Ryan Poles does feel more comfortable about waiting to round 2 to get an edge, I think that shows a huge level of faith in Austin Booker and who he's going to be. If we see Ryan Poles trade up, right, to do something, to be more aggressive about getting the edge, to me that says a lot about how they feel about Austin Booker and where he's going to go as well. I think both those things say a lot, right? So are the Bears going to be in a position to take best player available at a position of need at 25, which is edge, or are they going to be looking at best player available and then address the edge in the later rounds, right? That's what we're going to see with this one. I have no doubt that the Bears are going to draft an edge in this draft. Now, maybe that blows up in my face, but as things stand right now, I have no doubt that that's going to happen. The question is, where does it happen? Because you can't go into the season trusting Dayo Odeyingbo in his return with the injury, then on top of his performance last year. I just don't think you can go into that expecting that. So we'll see what happens there, but the edge is going to be addressed. The question really comes down to, where is it addressed? Where does Ryan Poles feel like he needs to attack that edge? What draft pick does he feel like he needs to attack that edge in? And we'll see, right? But that is what a lot of Bears fans are waiting for, to see how Ryan Poles addresses that edge position, because we need some edge depth. We need better performance on that edge, and let's see what we get from that one, right? Then the last question for the Chicago Bears is, do you draft a linebacker? We know we got Devin Bush, right? We brought back Jack Sanborn. We brought back DeMarco Jackson. All three guys who I think are going to have a really solid veteran linebacking group, along with TJ Edwards once he comes back from injury. He just may miss the preseason, not really a threat to miss much of the start of the season unless there's a setback. You also have Ruben Hippolyte, right, who, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of, right? But he couldn't crack the lineup rotation last year, even with all the injuries. He had an injury himself. So there's some questions there. I do think Ruben Hippolyte, especially when hearing the Bears want to kind of focus on adding speed to this team, That's one thing that stands out about Ruben Hippolyte. That motherfucker is fast, right? So, but does Ryan Poles feel like that linebacking room is comfortable where it's at, or does he want to go ahead and get ahead of it? TJ Edwards could leave next year, right? You signed Devin Bush, which you paid him. Do you want to bring in some low cost reinforcements with drafting? So does linebacker get addressed in this draft? I'm 50-50 of it, right? I think that there's an equal chance that linebacker is addressed as much as maybe the Bears just hold off on it, especially if they do feel Ruben Hippolyte is going to be ready. But there's some linebackers in this draft that I would absolutely love to be wearing the blue and orange of the Chicago Bears next year. And we're just going to see. I'm glad to have Jack Sanborn back. I know C-Dub is ecstatic to have him back with this team. And we'll just see. Is it that we're going to roll with the linebacking core of DeMarco Jackson, Devin Bush, Jack Sanborn, TJ Edwards, and Ruben Hippolyte? Noah Sewell's still on the roster too. He had a late injury. He could not be ready by the start of the season. So we'll see what happens in that one. There's a lot of names in the middle of the draft. Malcolm Rodriguez out of Texas Tech is a guy that I love on day 2 that I think under Dennis Allen's system could absolutely thrive. Let's see if it ends up happening. But let me know what you guys think on that. What are some of the biggest question marks that you have for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears heading into the 2026 draft? Like I said, one of the questions I didn't put on here is how aggressive is Ryan Poles? Does he package the 2 second-round picks? Does he package one of the second rounds in the first to move up in the first? We're going to see. And I think that how aggressive we see Ryan Poles be about moving up and getting in a certain position is going to really dictate a lot of what we see in the rest of the draft for the Bears. Let's just see what happens there. All right, with that said, let's get into the last thing. We're talking about draft, right? And the Bears have been urged by Alex Ballantyne to avoid one prospect that we've actually covered pretty heavily here. Alex Ballantyne is of Bleacher Report, and in regards to Malachi Lawrence, he said this. Lawrence, a 6'4", 235-pound edge, has incredible athleticism, but he did some of his best work standing up. There's a legitimate concern about his ability to hold up against the bigger tackles on the perimeter in the run game. And so the question now becomes about, should the Bears overlook him? Now, I think that Malachi Lawrence, especially because of where he's projected to be drafted at, would be a hell of a player for the Chicago Bears to get. But there is some things of, does his, and we talked a lot about what the Bears have done here is so far in free agency, and what we expect them to continue to do in the draft is target players that have a schematic fit for the Chicago Bears, right? That fit the scheme of how Dennis Allen, on the offense and defense for that matter, but how they can use them schematically. And if Malachi Lawrence does present something in where the scheme fit isn't as seamless, like it's not as seamless for like a TJ, as it is with a TJ Parker, Akeem Messidor, Keldrick Falk, like all those guys' play style absolutely fits the Chicago Bears excellently well, right? And so it's going to be one of those things where to see where the Bears look at talent. Do they think that a player's talent could overcome some maybe schematic, shortcomings? Or are they so bought into what they want to do schematically? Do they pass up players that have talent because they're not necessarily as seamless of a schematic fit? And that's that high-level kind of football conversation that has to go into when you're a draft, right? It's not just about the talent. Us as fans, we talk about the combine numbers. We talk about the numbers they did in college. We talk just about the skill set, right? Or what the performance of what they did. Coaches also have to look at how scheme fit and the skill set of a player matters within that scheme. Because if you have a player that's talented, but the scheme isn't set up to make the most out of it, they're not going to look as good in your system and in your scheme. And that's what the Bears really have to look at, right? So while Malachi Lawrence does have flashes and has shown some flashes that he could adapt, right? And that's the thing when it comes down to it, that he could very well adapt to what the Bears need. And that's the part that you need your coaches and your scouts. It's not just about who the player is now, it's about who they can become. And maybe with the schematic fit or a schematic change, you actually can bring out different parts of their game that didn't look like it would be as nicely of a fit on paper, right? So that's the thing when it comes down to it. I like Malachi Lawrence as a player. If the Bears draft him, I'm not mad at that. And I also think that we have a coaching staff that is going to be able to adapt enough as well that going to look at the player and then look at the situation and say, all right, how do we get this to overlap? If it's a Venn diagram, how much of it can we get to overlap so we can have success with this player and they can have success on our team and help us win football games, right? So guys like Malachi Lawrence, who may not be the most seamless schematic fit, I think that sometimes the talent kind of speaks over that some too. It just really comes down to what the mindset of is this Bears team. But I go back to trusting Dennis Allen, trusting our position coaches. Because if they go to Ryan Poles and say, hey, listen, the guy Malachi Lawrence, if he's on your board, like we have some guys that we'd rather work with above him, but if you take him, it's cool, right? That's where the collaborative nature between the front office and the coaching staff really comes into place because you have to have that communication to understand where and how you can go. And so we'll see what happens in that one. Pose's draft strategy is probably not going to change. So we're going to see him always address best player available. And we'll see what that means for the Chicago Bears and for him leading into Thursday, where the NFL draft goes down, and we're going to get to see it all. So let me know what you guys think on all of that down below. The Bears are back, but the work is far from finished. And now things are going to start taking shape for the season. The coaches are back. The draft is around the corner. So I want to ask you guys this question. What do you think of the Bears that they need to address first in this draft? Should they go safety or defensive line first? Let me know your thoughts on that down below. What players do you think may not be a scheme fit for the Chicago Bears? Let me know that down below. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. You guys can like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Always hit that notification bell if you never want to miss an upload. You can follow us at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform. You can also send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.